What's up, fantasy junkies and fellow fantasy sweaters? Welcome back to the podcast, the YouTube channel. This is the Daily Fantasy Sweat. I'm your host, Kris King, and today we are doing a lineup review show of my cash lineup, so you can see who I played. We're going to review the Millionaire Maker, and then we're going to go ahead. We're kind of combining these shows, smashing them together. Then we're going to do the jump-off show and kind of take a first look at Week 8. Congrats to Need Lunch Money out there, a friend of the show, friend of the podcast. Just a guy I met out in the DFS, some of the DFS spaces out there in social media. And I've chatted with him a little bit about coming on the show. He's a busy guy, and I'm not sure if we'll work together at any point, but he did help take down the million last night. Split it 5 ways. Took home, a little over $200,000, $230-something thousand last night. So congrats to Need Lunch Money on that takedown yesterday. All right, let's jump to our review, and we're taking a look at my cash game lineup last night, or this past weekend, and had a really good cash week. Definitely did. Definitely improved on the week before. I'm new to cash, have never really dove into head-to-heads much. Double ups, not really my thing. Like I've mentioned before, in this era of DFS, everyone's pushing the tournaments, and that's what we all gravitate to, especially newer DFS players. But definitely recommend playing cash games. It's a whole new world. It's super fun. It's a completely different game. I mean, you're going up against people who are putting in very similar lineups. So the fun part to me is really trying to figure out those just couple pivots, those 1v1s, the 2v2s that are going to set you apart. But here's my cash team, my stupid DFS name, DraftKings name that I hate, K-King Music. Scored 208 points this week. Good enough for 1927, that 1,927th in the $5 double up. 17, you can't see that on your screen, but it's over 17,000 entries. And 133 of my 39 cash lineups. Wish I would have hunted down more fish this week in cash. I got a late start doing my hunting, but really hit it hard on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's really when the cash, the head-to-head lobby really fills up. So if you just scroll in there, man, you just take 1 minute, multiple times a day on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So, you take a total of 20 minutes spread out over 3 days. I try to look, 5 or 6, 7 times a day on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, especially on Sunday because the lobby's just full. And you hunt down those guys with no badges or not fully filled out, experienced badges, and find your prey. That's the way to do it. Especially if you're starting out and you're still eligible to play those games. If you're super experienced, you're not able to play the low end cash games. But all right, let's just move on to talking about the lineup. Here is my lineup in full. Kyler Murray, Kamara Williams, Devontae Adams, Terry McLaurin, Traquan Smith, Travis Kelce, Gio Bernard, and the Washington football team defense. Let's start with quarterback, Kyler Murray. Fairly obvious. He was the play to me going down the home stretch the whole weekend. I kind of looked at Deshaun Watson, kind of looked at Joe Burrow, and if you went some of those spots, I wouldn't blame you. Definitely, two spots that I liked, 2 guys that I trusted, had decent price ranges for what their potential ceiling outcome was. But in the end, Kyler Murray at this price, just too cheap. I know it's not a cheap price tag overall, but for his ceiling, which he hit. Definitely was a value. So started with Kyler. Got the Mixon news early in the week, so Gio Bernard was going to be a play. all week and really almost didn't get there. He didn't get there until he got a last minute, like a fourth quarter touchdown reception. So that got him 7 points, 6 for the touchdown, 1 for the reception. So he was really always in play. And then obviously, Jamal Williams with Aaron Jones out. These guys were automatics come Sunday. You just get the 2 running back values with the injuries to the running backs in front of them. They were automatic. Kyler was in there. Plugging these 2 guys in definitely led to Kamara, so that was pretty much automatic also. We'll stop right there and kind of kick back to earlier in the week. Earlier in the week, before we knew we had Jamal, it was sort of a pay down situation at tight end, or was try to find the best value. Tight end didn't look great this week at all. I was kind of leaning on Austin Hooper because of the targets. He was still priced down too much. So I was kind of in a spot where I was going Austin Hooper here, and then my second running back would have been Kareem Hunt, who I loved this week. But then we got the Aaron Jones news. Jamal Adams comes in the picture. I just can't afford to keep Hunt in there because I have to play the value running backs, which is clearly going to allow me to spend up for Kamara, who was in a smash spot. So did that. I was on Washington football team all week. He was popping in models and optimizers all week at 2,500. Just a really good pass rush going up against the Dallas Cowboys with a beat up offensive line. It was the play all week. That was never in question. So yeah, Washington football team was there really before even Kyler and Gio were there for me. They were my first plug-in when I looked at cash games this week. So, all right, I got my quarterback set. I got my running back set. I got my defense set. Basically, I've got wide receivers and my tight end position left. With all this money and with what's going on, Austin Hooper not playing, I had Njoku in there for a little bit during the week, but then ultimately just decided to pay up for Kelsey. It was going to be a snow game. I didn't like tight end anyway, and I figured Kansas City's obviously going to run the ball in the snow. It's going to be a messy game, but this is where you can really get some production out of Travis Kelsey. Those short passes, just like midfield. It's not so much going to be a Tyreek week. It's going to be Kelsey week. I thought he'd, at least catch like 5 or 6 balls for, 50, 60, 70 yards. You get a touchdown on top of that. It's all gravy after that. So even though Kelsey, as you can't see because it's blocked by my screen here. Kelsey whiffed big time with this snowflake here. Only 6 points, 3 receptions for 31 yards. And I argue that it was still the play. Like, Kelsey was the play. I don't regret that at all, even though he only gave me 6 points. This was the most optimal build and the build that was used more than any other build in like pretty much like all contests across the league. Like, it's very rare that you see this, but this build was duped so many times, and that's kind of what you want. I mean, if everyone else is doing it, you're landing on the optimal build, and you want to match a lot of guys. The Washington football team defense being 45% owned, there's no way I would want any other defense when I know half the field has that, because this isn't tournaments. You're not trying to pivot off to something else. You're trying to hit the optimal, and if you're there while someone else is there, like if they whiffed, it's okay because half the other field whiffed as well, and which means you're only trying to score in the top 50% of a double up or a head-to-head. So likely either there's a really good chance that they had Washington and whiffed as well, or they had another defense who didn't do well. You just kind of want to be on these plays like Washington, like Gio, like Jamal Williams. It almost doesn't matter if they don't get there in cash. So having this and deciding on Kelsey, that Kelsey was the play, like, hey, just go up and pay up for tight end. It was just my 3 receivers, and I knew with the amount of salary I had, I wanted to plug in either Hopkins or Adams. Decided to go with Adams just because I wanted more of that game environment. Yes, I had Jamal Williams, but, I wanted another high-end player. I have a high-end player in Kyler from that game, which I wanted exposure to. I wanted another high-end player from the Green Bay-Houston game as well. Devontae Adams was and at the price, he was a little cheaper than Hopkins. pretty sure. I do believe he was. He just fit in perfectly. I was looking at McLaurin all week, popped that in, and then obviously that was going to keep it tight. It was going to make it really tight, but then when I put him in and I only had 4,000 left, Traquan's sitting there, who's normally not going to be your optimal type cash play, but with Michael Thomas out, with Emmanuel Sanders out, Traquan Smith was kind of a no-brainer. He was going to get, it seemed like he was going to get, he was going to get targets, because who else? I mean, yeah, Jared Cook's going to be out there. Yeah, Kamara's going to be pitching in, but Traquan at that price, allowing me to get Kelsey, allowing me to get Devontae, allowing me to get McLaurin, it was, to me, it was the optimal build. It was the way to go. There's a ton of teams who scored more than me. Again, considering over 17,000 people in this tournament, this is the $5 double up. I scored 1,927th in this tournament. And so here I am at 208, and you can see all these teams scored way more than me. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they were the right build. I think these guys got lucky. Let's look at some random teams in here and see if we can find mistakes. So here's like 226. This person played Christian Kirk, Ridley. I don't agree with these plays. Like, I don't think Kirk, even though Kirk got there, even though it was, it was a connection to Kyler, even though it was a high total game, I don't think that was necessarily, the play. Ridley, I mean, you can see here, like 8% owned, 2% owned. These guys were not optimal. Like, sharp people were not on these guys. Let's scroll up. 230, this J-Rod. I'm just randomly picking guys. Danny Amendola, I mean, seriously, like, I get Atlanta defense, but I guess at 3,300, he got you there with 9 points, but that was not the play. Tyler Kroft, just again, not the really, I mean, who's targeting Tyler Kroft in cash games? This is a decent lineup. I'm fine with that one. I mean, you played Mike Davis, who didn't do well, and which made you not be able to get to Geo. Right here, you had someone who played David Johnson. Even though I like David Johnson, I mean, Green Bay defense, terrible. 17 points, got you there. But when you have Geo and Jamal Williams, these are guys you just put in for cash. I get it if you don't want to do that for tournaments. Everybody else I'm fine with. Like, I don't really think Lockett should have really been in there. Again, 8% owned here. And yeah, he smashed. I get it. You got lucky that he smashed in this spot. Man, I was kind of flipping through here. Definitely saw some really bad ones. I mean, you're seeing a lot of the same guys. And Harrison Bryant is a guy I thought about pivoting to, but I felt good about having Kelsey. We got news really late, and I did make pivots in my tournaments, and he was my highest owned tournament tight end, because we got news that he would be the starter over Njoku. We know Harrison Bryant is a guy that this regime drafted, and Njoku wasn't. And that extra $500 from Njoku down to Bryant was very tempting for me in cash. But I felt like I was already set there once this news came out, and I really just wanted to pivot for tournaments, which I did, and it definitely helped me in some spots. Let's look at the very top lineup here. Murray, Kamara, Geo, Lockett, Adams, Deontay Johnson. I mean, this is a fine build here. Going down to Harrison Bryant definitely allowed, the guy to play Adams. Again, I don't think Lockett really was the play here, but I mean, clearly he was highest scoring player on the week. But yeah, that's cash for you this week, pretty much in a nutshell. That was my lineup. Let's look at the Millionaire Maker here. Up top, in Corfield, 8K, whatever your weird name is, 279 points. Played Russell Wilson at 6%, 35 points. Todd Gurley, 10% owned, 22 points. Jamal Williams, 36% owned, 21 points. Tyler Lockett, 10% owned, 56 points. Devontae Adams, 23% owned, 47 points. Deontay Johnson, 5% owned, 29 points. Harrison Bryant, 2.8% owned, 21 points. DeAndre Hopkins, 9.6% owned, 28 points. And went chalk with the Washington football team, 25% owned, 17 points. So this guy clearly went with the stack of the highest scoring game of the week. Russell Wilson teamed up with Lockett. Just a single stack there, no double stack. Ran it back with Hopkins. Very good move there. Put Devontae Adams in the mix as well. Took advantage of Aaron Jones being out with Jamal Williams. And, no run backs there on the no correlation with your two Green Bay guys. But you did have Todd Gurley in there, which is funny because he tried not to score. I mean, this guy gets so lucky that Todd Gurley accidentally scored that touchdown because Atlanta didn't want to score there on the final drive. They wanted to run down the clock, and by scoring, they gave Detroit the ball back, who was able to run down the field and kick a field goal to win the game. But beautiful lineup here overall, especially for tournaments. You got the below 5% ownership. Really what you're looking for is a couple below 7% ownership guys. You got that in Russell Wilson. You got it in Harrison Bryant. You got it in Deontay Johnson. You got a guy similar. 9% owned. Hopkins only 9% owned in such a great game environment. It's crazy. Devontae Adams, just, the nuts. Tyler Lockett, the nuts. Just landed really well. A decently built lineup. I typically you try to get more correlation in there, but I clearly that wasn't necessary this week. And really just didn't build any correlation except around those three guys. So one of the only times that we've seen this in the Millionaire Maker, there's usually at least a couple more pieces where you got one guy on one side and another on the other. But here it's just kind of the random guys is who he thought was going to be the best plays. Hashtag play the best plays. All right, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for the review. Let's move on to Week 8. It's a new dawn, a new day. It's a new DFS life here in Week 8. And we're almost halfway through, guys. Only 16 weeks in the regular season. Obviously, we'll have some playoff DFS, which is nice, but we are almost halfway through. We are getting halfway through the regular season. It's crazy how fast this goes by. All right, let's start at quarterback. And again, we're not going to look at everyone here. Just going to point out some people who are jumping up off the page here. Up top, Patrick Mahomes is the top-priced quarterback at 8,100. It's really weird to see Lamar Jackson down here at the fourth highest-priced quarterback. But they are playing Pittsburgh, a really good defense this week. Mahomes playing the Jets at home. He's in a complete smash spot here, but he's 8,100. It's very, very pricey. Definitely not somewhere where I'm going to go for cash, but in tournaments, he's got a huge ceiling. Will he even play the fourth quarter is the question I would ask myself. But the Jets defense, man, against the Bills, God, the Bills. I played so much Josh Allen last week. Highest exposed quarterback in tournaments. And, dude, every time they got to the red zone or anywhere near it, the Jets' defense ears just perked up, and they just stopped the Bills from scoring. I think their field goal kicker kicked like 6 field goals, I swear. I don't think they're really going to do that to Mahomes. He is in just a really good spot here. And in a down week last week, he's going to want to play. So unless there's inclement weather in Kansas City, I see him being a great play for tournaments. Again, not for cash. Going to want to look for someone a little bit cheaper, get a little bit more bang for your buck. Not to say that Mahomes can't give you bang for your buck, but it's going to be tough to fill out the rest of your lineup. Russell Wilson, back at home, playing against the San Francisco 49ers, whose defense is not really what it's been in years past. But you look at, it's tough to see. Fantasy points. There we go. Wilson has been so consistent all year. When your floor is 24, 25 points, you're having a good year. Again, very expensive for cash, a decent tournament play. Aaron Rodgers at home against Minnesota. Last time they played, they have already played earlier this year, was week 1. He put up just a huge stat line, 32 for 44, 364 yards, 4 touchdowns, one. Did he have a rushing touchdown? Let's see. Where's touchdowns? No, he didn't have a rushing touchdown. Those are just attempts. But yeah, had a massive game. Now they get Minnesota with a terrible secondary at home against the Vikings. Solid play, but again, expensive. A lot of these quarterbacks are priced up. You got Lamar Jackson at home against Pittsburgh. Hasn't been the Lamar Jackson we're used to. He's had one, what I would call, huge game. It's 30 or above right here last week against Philadelphia. And his previous best game was week 1 here. Got close to 30 against Cleveland. He's 7,400. I mean, it's the fourth quarterback being 7,400. That's still being still pretty pricey. I mean, a lot of quarterbacks in this, above 7K range. I'm going to kind of want to sneak down here a little bit, see what matchups I like. You got Justin Herbert against Denver. He's getting up there in price. What I really like is getting down here back to Joe Burrow. 6,200. He's jumped up $700 from his $5,500 price tag, but dude is chucking, and his fantasy points aren't always there. He's had a couple down weeks here against Jacksonville and Baltimore, which you can't see there. But yeah, I mean, obviously against, did I say Baltimore? Yeah, it was Baltimore. Obviously, you're going to struggle against Baltimore, but dude's leading the league in dropbacks, so he's passing more than any other quarterback in the league, and that's what you want. I mean, you want somebody who's going to chuck the ball. Playing Tennessee, a very good team. Just got their first loss. They're going to be charged up, ready to play. Tennessee, I assume, takes the lead in this game. I think Henry is a phenomenal play against this weak Cincinnati defense. And I think Cincinnati's going to be playing from behind. And it's not like the Titans have a great defense either. So Joe Burrow can make things happen. Might be my cash game quarterback. You could be looking at him as one of the top-owned quarterbacks on the week. Anybody else in here catching my eye? Cam Newton against Buffalo. This could be a spot where he kind of comes back to life. Looked just terrible. This whole New England team has looked awful in the last 2 games they've played. I mean, check it out here. Against Denver 2 weeks ago, he managed to climb and claw and scrape up to 20 fantasy points, but it was not pretty. Against San Francisco, 2 points. But the Buffalo defense hasn't been great. And this could be a bounce back spot for Cam Newton. Tua, it's Tua time, and there's nothing to look at game log wise. He got a couple minutes, or maybe less than a minute, in the Jets game. But I'm very excited to see what happens. I picked him up in my main season-long team, hoping that maybe he just comes out and he's kind of Superman. He's like, the next big thing. I'm very excited to see what happens there. So I thought there was one other thing I wanted to look at quarterback, but I don't seem to be seeing it. So let's just move on to running back. You got Kamara, highest price guy at 8,200, very pricey. Derrick Henry in the 8K range as well. Starting to see these running backs get priced up where they have been in the past, where we've seen running back pricing be a little bit lower than normal. But running back production has not been up on the year when it comes to injuries, committees being more of a thing these days. It's just running back production has not really been there. What I really like this week, and these guys are both very good plays. They're pricey. They are on the road, which I don't love. But if Dalvin Cook gets to play this week against Green Bay, and we talked about this a lot last week, about when it came to David Johnson, and we saw David Johnson scored 17 fantasy points. And there's not really much to look here at Dalvin Cook, except the fact that he's been on a bye and he missed a week due to injury. So he's had some time to really rest that injury. He's currently questionable. What I want to look at is, where is this David Johnson character? Did I pass him up, or did Or is he just down here in the doldrums of, or he might even be on the slate, actually. So that might be it. But, yeah, David Johnson had a great game quietly against the Packers, who do not have a good rush defense. So I think Dalvin Cook could be an amazing play. Don't know if Aaron Jones is coming back. Really would be a nice pivot in tournaments off of, what is going to be a potentially popular but a very expensive stack in Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. So if Jones comes back and plays, might be a really good pivot in tournaments. Kareem Hunt against the Raiders, going to be a strong cash consideration for me against, the Raiders are terrible against the run. Jonathan Taylor, can we trust him after seeing, game logs that look the way they look? He got off to a decent start, and when I say start, I kind of mean week 2 here. Week 1, you're not going to fully unleash a rookie, but in week 2, they increased his role. He actually saw the most touches he saw in week 2 and put up 22 fantasy points. I'll take that, but in these next weeks to come, he would lose touches and lose production. So I don't really know if you can trust him. I would love to see high ownership on Jonathan Taylor because I would love to fade him. Although Detroit is not a very good run defense as well. Pretty much everyone in this area going up against, and don't really look at this as DVP is not necessarily like what you want to look for, but people are going to see it, and which are going to make them gravitate towards these guys, which makes them pretty decent tournament fades. If you ask me, Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the mix too. Who knows what's going to happen when you see Le'Veon Bell get more and more involved in the offense. Let's kind of scroll down here a bit. Joe Mixon questionable to return. We don't know much there. You got Josh Jacobs going up against Cleveland on the road. Not a great rush defense, but not sure. Definitely not. I don't know. It's a decent price on him. I'm going to have to do some more digging on Josh Jacobs. You have Jamal Williams, who is now priced up to $6,100 after being a mere 45 last week, or flat 4K. So Jamal Williams is, pretty much out of play at this point. Gio is $5,800. Again, pretty much out of play at this point with, even if the guys miss. Neither of them are in great situations. I would rather, play the passing games for both Cincinnati and Green Bay, if possible. And, it's pricey to play Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, but these guys just aren't going to be in play for me this week. If Dalvin Cook doesn't play, here's Alexander Mattison going up against Green Bay. Honestly, if he doesn't play, I would really consider Alexander Mattison because recency bias is people are going to remember being burned by Mattison. They were going up against Atlanta. Atlanta took a lead early, so Minnesota sort of abandoned the run. When they did run it, Atlanta actually is pretty decent at the run defense, awful at the passing defense. So if Dalvin Cook doesn't play, actually Alexander Mattison at $6K going up against the Packers run defense is something that I would be all over in tournaments, especially if recency bias is going to come into play. Might be very interesting. I have Dalvin Cook in my main season-long team, and I really want him to play, but on a DFS level, I kind of want him to sit so I can see what happens with ownership on Alexander Mattison. We continue to scroll to see if anyone else pops out at us. DeAndre Swift. Well, looks like my Mac wants us to play DeAndre Swift. Got really excited there. Only 5,300, and seeing an increased role. Look, weeks past, 3 attempts, 5 attempts, 0 attempts, 4 attempts. But week 6 gets involved, 14 attempts. Week 7, 9 attempts. Involved more heavily in the passing game in these weeks here. Definitely more than a $5,300 player, I believe. Playing Indianapolis, who is on paper a good defense. Indianapolis, though, I don't think has played A ton of great teams, though. Where's Taylor? Let's look at Indianapolis's schedule and who they've played. Week 1, Jacksonville, Minnesota, the Jets, Chicago, Cleveland, Cincinnati. So that defense, although could be fairly decent, could be a farce as well. So I'm not really scared about playing Swift here. I like that. What else are we seeing? Hasty with your boy, the guy, his name is escaping me, but he got injured. Jeff or Smith or whatever his name is. I can't remember. King? No, I don't know his name. The guy who went nuts against the Patriots and then got injured. But Jermichael Hasty might come into play, but it's hard to tell what they're going to do. Are they going to run McKinnon out there for the bulk? Or are they going to give it to this kid Hasty? I don't know. We'll have to see what happens there. And pretty much with the running back position in a whole later in the week, let's move to wide receiver where, again, up top, Devontae Adams, 8-8. That's very pricey. DK Metcalf coming off of a stinker game. Just only one catch, I believe, right? One target, one catch? No, okay, you got 5 targets. Okay, 2 receptions, but only 4 fantasy points. Definitely poised for a bounce back. Who else are we looking at here? Who pops off the screen? I wonder if Lockett's going to get massive ownership just because of recency bias. Man, wide receiver doesn't look super attractive. I mean, you're not seeing a ton of great matchups. I mean, up top here, when you look, this is a good matchup, but that's a tough price. Metcalf, again, like second highest price receiver, not the best matchup. I don't know what's really going on with San Francisco's defense. Early on, they were struggling. Have to check the status of some of their cornerbacks. We don't know if Michael Thomas is going to play. He's just like the new Antonio Brown at this point. Thielen, all these guys are pricey, not really in good matchups. Allen Robinson, questionable this week. Not sure how viable that is. Diggs against the Patriots. A.J. Brown against Cincinnati when they're probably going to be running the ball. Tyreek Hill against the Jets. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Sorry, I have an ear itch. For those of you watching on YouTube, wondering why I keep going up under my headphones. Yeah, this is a decent matchup. So Tyreek at 67, still pretty cheap. Galladay's still pretty cheap. Again, don't know if that Indy defense, with Xavier Rhodes, who I definitely think is a farce and has lost most of his abilities, he might be a great play. Still pretty cheap when you talk about the number one receiver in fantasy last year. As far as that was Michael Thomas, but Galladay led in some, whether it was yards, touchdowns. He had massive touchdowns last year, but he's a good play right there. Man, the Cincinnati offense I love. So Tyler Boyd, Higgins, T. Higgins, we're gonna find down here at some point. Man, there's just nothing. Because you look up here, there's no Atlanta. Who's Seattle playing? They're playing San Francisco. So, like a guy like Brandon Ayuk, who is starting to come out of his shell, 7 targets, 6 receptions, 115 yards, at 20 fantasy points. That's with no touchdowns. So maybe we're targeting San Francisco wide receivers. Maybe Landry's in the mix with ODB. ODB. We're not talking about old dirty bastard. OBJ on the shelf. Yeah, I don't know, man. The wide receiver looks quite tough this week. We're going to have to dive into this a little bit more and come back. Tight end. We got both big dogs up here, and Kelsey has slid down to second. And that's very interesting considering what his matchup is this week and just the situation he was in last week. That was clearly fluky. How much was he last week? He was 6,300. Okay, well, he's come up in price then. I thought that seemed pretty cheap for Kelsey. You got Andrews in the mix against Pittsburgh. That's tough. Darren Waller against Cleveland. That's a really nice matchup. We'll dive into tight end a little more down the line. There's still a lot to look at. see what opens up here. I have to see what happens in Cleveland, and I'm starting to lose my voice here. So, all right, yeah, just had to do that one time. So yeah, well, that's pretty much going to wrap it up. We looked at the three main positions, kind of looked at the top of tight end here. My voice is giving me trouble, so it's time to sign off and say goodbye. Thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading as always. If you are not a subscriber to the YouTube channel, go over there, search Daily Fantasy Sweat. And if you're a podcast person, check us out on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. Leave us a rating and review. Always appreciated. And we will be back later in the week. We're going to do another underdog show. We're going to do an entire underdog fantasy show this week. Going to look over there. I want a little bit over there, starting to get the hang of kind of how to approach, some of those big tournaments. So we'll do a live draft over there, live on the podcast and YouTube channel. Or maybe we'll only do it on YouTube, and that will get some of you podcast people over to the YouTube channel. That might be YouTube exclusive over there. So if you want that content, you might have to just jump over on YouTube. So keep an eye on that later in the week, and we'll keep it going. Getting ready for Week 8 for all you sweaters out there. All right, until we meet again, as always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and may all your fantasy dreams come true.